Hello everyone, this is my first Warhammer 40K book. This is Horus Rising by Dan Abnett. See if you can get a good look at there's Space Marines. So all you Warhammer 40K fans, I get it. So this is pretty good. This is, when you ask which book to start with, this is usually the one. I've had some alternates, but I had already bought this one, so this is my first. Quick trivia, how many Warhammer 40K books are there? Over 400 novels just for this. Now, I'm not going to pretend I'm going to try to read 400 novels. I read about one a week, so I'm not getting caught up on that. But the first three, from what I understand, form an arc of their own, and the reason I wanted to dip my toes into this is because, one, I've heard about Warhammer 40K since I can remember. It started in the late 1980s as a war game, and they have stores all their own. And I heard, of course, Henry Cavill wants to start up a streaming series based on Warhammer 40K because, as he said in an interview, that's my jam, man. So I gave this a shot to get to know it a little bit. I'm glad I did because I actually really did enjoy the book, and it was actually pretty surprising in the way it is. This is about invasion. It's military science fiction. But there's a motivating force behind why they are trying to take things over. But I'm going to get to that because it's really interesting the way they do this. So it starts with, it's something that actually confused me, in fact, because behind all this sits this guy called the Emperor of Mankind. And so when this starts out, this fellow Loken, not Horus, but Loken, he's going to go take over this world. And somebody there calling themselves the Emperor of Mankind, and I didn't understand what was going on. Are they waging war against the guy who rules over them? Is this the uprising? What's going on? And it turns out that in the ancient past, everyone came from Earth, called Terra, and as they got out into the galaxy, people splintered off and formed their own areas of the galaxy to inhabit, and this was one of them. But there is an actual Emperor of Mankind, and the guy at the beginning of this isn't that guy. So he's a false one, and he's got his own world that he rules over. And what these guys want to do is get everybody under one rulership. So they send in negotiators. The negotiators are killed, so they invade and they take over, and that's just what they do. So, but what are the negotiations? Hey, we're going to rule over you, or else. This is like the story of an evil empire. There are some very ancient Roman-sounding words, so I assume the author took some verbiage from the time period. And I thought back, well, ancient Rome, very basically speaking, certainly went and invaded other areas to get them under their rulership, all under the guise of we are the light. And that's the darkness. We gotta bring them into our fold. Meanwhile, at the top is this usually horrid and cruel emperor running things, doing all kinds of hedonistic whatever. We don't get introduced to the emperor in this one, so we don't know what he does. Hopefully he comes up in one of these first three books and we get his history. Someone did say that these first three books do give a history lesson, and I want to know that. I want to know what in the world's going on there. So they invade this world, they run it over. I've heard people, like there's a wonderful website called spacebattles.com, and they talk about various science fiction worlds if they get into battles with each other, what would happen. And so the prevailing opinion seemed to be that if you take Star Wars versus Warhammer 40K, that these ships, the large capital ships, Star Wars has got the edge there. But if stormtroopers meet these guys on the ground in these giant pieces of armor that they wear and the weapons they wield, they will just get run over on the battlefield, and that's what they do here. The combat is explained really well. It's described so good. Things like, just as an example, dude lets loose with his kinetic weapon, and the target's explode and disintegrate in a cloud of pink mist. Just really good stuff for warfare description. So they run it over. This guy Loken encounters this false emperor. And the emperor looks at him and says, why couldn't you just leave us alone? And this kind of sticks with him. So they leave there, and later on, Loken has a session. And by the way, this Loken guy, these space marines, they're called Luna Wolves. That's the name of their group. This is not the entire army, is not made up of them, but these are the big guns. And these people are genetically engineered. They can be killed, but they have unending lifespans, and they're like 2.5 meters tall. They're just giants among the army, and they are the leaders. It hasn't sounded terribly tyrannical, but at the same time you have to watch your P's and Q's. Still, so Loken has this obsession with what's called I'm going to pronounce it wrong, remembrancer. These are archivists, people who want to record things, wartime journalists, if you want to call them that. And he describes this invasion to her. And even she says, well, why couldn't you just leave them alone? And this is twice he's been hit with this. And he starts to, it's like the seeds of doubt being planted. After that, they have another world they go to. And this one resembles more like something you see out of there's a book and movie, Starship Troopers. These sort of large spider-ish arachnid cyborg creatures on this world. And are like, well, we got to get this world. So they go in and they're going to try to take over the place. But these things do fight back. And one of their own, the Imperium of Man soldiers, one of their own goes nuts. And he transforms into something hideous and attacks his own soldiers. And they have to take him out. And again, he didn't understand why, because the Imperium of Man, they have completely shunned religion, magic, and spiritualism. And so this bothers him because it was like this man became possessed. And so now these seeds of doubt are being watered a little bit. He goes off to see this guy called an iterator. And these are basically a combination of priests and propagandists. And he expresses himself to them. And here's the gist of this that I was really impressed with. What it is, he tells them that it's not that might makes us right. It's just that we already know we're right, and we're going to use our might to explain it to everybody, and everybody's going to come under our rulership. So they go about the galaxy basically to take it over, and we're going to rule you. Now, like I said at the beginning, they did send in negotiators, so they don't just automatically start wiping things out. But it's basically under threat. We're going to work together, or you're going to let us rule you, or we have to, just come in here and take you over. And that's this guy explaining it to him as if this is the glory of the empire. We have to show them the way. They've shunned gods and mysticism, and they don't claim to be gods. Even the Emperor of Mankind, I've read a little bit about him. He's also completely immortal. I don't know that he can or cannot be killed, but he's been alive for a long time. I seem to recall him having some kind of mental powers of some kind. And he's set at the top, but he doesn't claim to be a god, despite his abilities. However, they have literally replaced religion with themselves. So even though they're not claiming godhood, and they're saying gods don't exist, you're gonna do what we say. We are the truth and the light. So they have replaced religion with themselves to have a good excuse for why they're just gonna take over the galaxy. Many of the soldiers presented they do have individual personalities, but Loken is the one we see everything through. There's a few other little viewpoint characters here and there, but mostly it's through his eyes, and he's having doubts, especially with this the iterator tells them it wasn't that your fellow soldier was possessed and transformed. He was probably infected with something. We're science guys. We nothing happened to him out of the ordinary. It can be explained this way. He's reading this old fantasy series. It was called The Chronicles of Ursh. And he reads this passage about someone who gets possessed and turns on his own. Now, they're called the Chronicles of Ursh. It seems to present as fiction, but it's also historical in some way, perhaps like a mythology. But he sees this again written down exactly as what happened when they invaded his bug world, and now he's really having doubts. So, there's a third encounter. This other fleet shows up. And they seem to want to be a little more peaceful this time around, because the gist that I got was they said, this looks like powerful people, so we're going to negotiate a little more, and maybe we'll be partners. But still the idea is, nah, we're right, you got to do what we want. But they come together and talk. Well, it doesn't go well. And part of the reasoning is these guys explain to the Imperium, know this sort of magic sorcery stuff exists, these demons do exist, this possession does exist, and at that point big old headbutting happens. Now there's some kind of unexplained in this book accident. Somebody gets blamed for something, that the Imperium of Man gets blamed for something they don't think that they did, and war breaks out during the negotiations. They have to escape. They send a delegation, so it's just a delegation getting away. They didn't go in rolling them over with their military. And so, again, we don't know for sure just yet as this starts. Again, I've been exposed to Warhammer, just little bits of information, something I read. There may be something to this. It's something called the warp, which is, I believe, some kind of, I don't know about an alternate dimension, but they use some kind of warp to get from star to star, and somewhere in there may be something called the chaos, which is a bunch of evil things trying to get out and infect everything. And so this other civilization they ran into is now thinking that the Imperium of Man has been infected, and that's why they're so warlike and trying to take everything over. So this is a well-expressed book. I actually really enjoyed it. I get it now. It's they do talk things over with each other about why we're doing what we're doing, and not everything's. It's like they don't want to ever disagree with the Emperor and his teachings and his leadership, but he is a distant figure, and they do have thoughts of their own. This says Horus Rising, and there is a guy named Horus in the book, and he's called the War Master. There's the Emperor, then there's him. And we do get quite a bit of him in this book. He is the warrior, and he's also a bit of a politician, and he is good at manipulating the moments, and he is extremely charismatic. So I don't know what's going to happen between. Is Horus going to take over as the lead? Because it's been Loken as our viewpoint character, and so Horus Rising is about Horus taking over. Is Loken going to get killed? I don't know, but I want to find out. And so I am indeed. I already went ahead and got it. On to the second book, False Gods. Now, curious enough, this is written by Dan Abnett. This one is written by someone called Graham McNeil, so I hope the flavor doesn't change too much and I wind up disliking it. Far from Terra, the 16th Legion, XB1, 16th Legion, continue in the Great Crusade as the Sons of Horus. At the end of the group was called the Luna Wolves. That was the name of their brigand or whatever, their company. And then they called themselves the Sons of Horus at the end, so that's them. Putting the challenges of becoming War Master behind him, Horus has become more withdrawn as he struggles to deal with the jealousy of his brother Primarchs, and increasingly relies upon the counsel of his advisors as he plans each new campaign. Noble Captain Garvel Loken harbors misgivings about the clandestine ways adopted by many of his brethren, But when the Legion is sent to reconquer the moon of Davin, it is clear that Horus has a personal stake in the matter, which may have clouded his judgment. With dark forces rising against them, have the Primarch and his warriors been drawn into the trap. Ooh, so as long as this one holds up, I'll be after the third one shortly thereafter. That's it. I'm not going to fully and try to chase after 400 some books, but I've enjoyed the first one. So again, Warhammer 40K fans, I get it, and I'm in all the way. Thank you very much. See you in about a week with book number 2. Bye-bye.